Hi everyone, and welcome back to the YouTube channel. Today we are working with farm fresh raw milk. We have a surplus, and whenever we have a surplus, it's time to can some up. We are doing some rodent canning today, or rebel canning, because this is not in any USDA book of approvals, but it's real simple to do. And a 12-ounce can of evaporated milk at the store is about $1.79 right now for the store brand, and over $2 for the national brands. I have got these 8-ounce quilted jelly jars, and this works really good because it takes 3 of these for me to do a lot of my pie recipes, like pumpkin pie. So then I just need 3 of those. If you wanted to have a 12-ounce can around, you could do some 4-ounce jars. You could do a combination of both. And I'll tell you, one of the things I asked for Christmas this year was some additional canning racks or bottoms for my pressure canner so that I can stack them up. Remember, with pressure canning, it doesn't have to be underwater. So you've got to have one of these in the bottom of your pot to keep your jar off of the direct heat from the heater. So I can fit 24 to 25 8-ounce jars in my canner. And I am going to be making some cheese today. I've already skimmed some of this off to take a percentage of that cream to my mixer for doing butter. So today I'm going to get butter, buttermilk, cheese, we're doing a farmhouse cheddar, and evaporated milk. Now, it's a marathon kind of thing. Like, my cheese recipe is 3.5 hours, so I may as well work on some other things in the process. So I always try to start with like straightening up and cleaning up, and I'm getting a late start on this. It's 5 o'clock already because breakfast cleanup, lunch. By the time I get going, it's a good day to do it because nothing else is going on for the rest of the day. It's a cool day, and this is going to heat the house for us. So to set up your water bath canner, you want to add a couple of tablespoons of vinegar. I'm actually out of white vinegar as usual, so I'm substituting with apple cider vinegar, and 3 quarts of water. Now, we have well water, so it's good to use distilled water if you don't want to get a white scale on your jars, if you have it. And that's where the vinegar comes into play. It helps with that quite a bit. So with the water softener, it doesn't happen too much. It's not bad. My jars are all washed and dry, my lids and bands. Now, this is a cold pack or a raw pack method. And like I said, this is milk from our farm. This is not store-bought milk. You can do it with creamline milk. You can do it with store-bought milk. I'm not sure about like the ultra-high pasteurized. I've got my jars all ready to go, and I've transferred, we store our milk in glass jars to a pitcher just so that it's a quicker, easier pour for me. Now, normally I would clean my lids and bands off, or the tops of my jars, with vinegar water. You don't want to get any curdling, so I'm just going to do some hot water. I've usually got like the tea kettle on where I can dab a cloth napkin to make sure, also making sure you have no chips in the tops of your glass jars, because that will cause something to not seal. All good new lids and bands with the pressure canner. I never take a chance with reusing a lid where I have in water bath canning, because you've got to have that seal. If you have any bends or cracks, or if it's rusty on your bands, discard it. It won't use. A little bit like this is not a big issue. It's if it's on the inside. So that one's got a little questionable spot there. So this one we'll just put aside. We want to make sure that they're in good condition. If you really want to help take a long life in these, you can vacuum seal them to keep moisture away from them when they're in the basement, not in use. So I'm going to go ahead and flip these over and get them filled. This is all set. We don't have to preheat it. I want to make sure that that rack is down there on the bottom, and we'll fill a layer, lids and bands, put this extra divider rack on top. I picked these up on Amazon, and I can put a link in the description below, because I wanted to be able to do like 4-ounce jars and 8-ounce jars, being able to stack them up. So with 4-ounce jars, I can get 4 layers or 3 safely. Just depends on, the height with this after, but 2 layers with these 8-ounce jars. And that really helps time-wise, because normally when we buy our evaporated milk, we're buying 2 cases at a time to have on the shelf as a milk substitute or to use as cream in our coffee if we are out of milk. So a tip in canning, this jar band, the first line, is 1 inch. So I filled each one of my jars up. I've got my first layer all in the canner. Here's our dividing rack. And if this is too heavy for you, you can set this on the stove. But I figure fill it is full and it's cold, so handling it is not a problem. I wouldn't want to lift it off of the stove hot and loaded. So what we're going to do is fill this up, set it on the stove, and like I said before, see, these aren't setting underwater at all. And we are going to let this heat up. Now, I just used tap water, you know, regular temperature, not hot, not cold, like that. And you want to make sure and test your canner, use it, you know, make sure that everything is okay on it before you start this project. We've got our weight. We won't put that on until it has vented for 10 minutes, just like you do in any other canning. When you see a good steady stream of steam coming out of the vent, we'll set the timer for 10 minutes then before adding the weight. And these are always very particular about lining up the lugs to put on. And this is a Presto canner, and it has been very faithful to me. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on my burner, and we're going to move it over here to the stove top. So I just want to show real quick what's going on behind me. I'm starting to get a broken stream of steam here coming out of where the weight is going to go, or the vent. And the locking tab, I forget what all the different names are, but that's going to pop up here in just a second. It starts getting kind of some bubbly water around it. Don't be worried about that. As things get hot and steamed up in here, that's going to pop up, and then that will get this stream going here. So we're almost at that point. When that happens, and then this is a steady stream, that's when you start your 10 minutes timer for that. See, now it just popped up just now. Bring you up close. So now that's going to allow it to start building pressure. So let's talk money for just a second. This canner is a little over a gallon of milk right now in here. Now we have 2 milking cows. They give us about 2 to 3 gallons a day, depending on how many hours goes between milking, the feed that they're on, and things like that. These aren't large herd Holsteins or Jerseys. The one freshened in July, so she's a few months off from being a year since she calved, and the other one in January, so she's only a few months into milking. That being said, her cream is way heavier or thicker than the others, and that's why I go ahead and skim some of that cream off. The kids don't like that in the milk, and it can it separates just overnight from setting in the jars. So that's why I always have the mixer going on these milk using up days to skim off some of that. So in my cheese, in my canned milk, there's a small amount of cream still in there because I don't skim it right down to nothing. So like, just to give you a quick look here in my mixer, I just make my butter in my KitchenAid mixer, and I can can this buttermilk as well the same way and have that buttermilk on hand so that it's here. If in the summertime we get too busy and I don't want to have the cows, I am kind of ensuring our dairy supply of things in advance to that. So I've got a steady stream right now. We're going to set that timer. So with my cheese recipe, skimming and doing, it's a little over a gallon of milk in my 24 jars, 196 ounces of milk. I think I figured out. Anyways, 8 jars out of my refrigerator, which the temperature was warmer yesterday. Today is cooler. If it's cold outside, I can leave them outside because our refrigerator's at like roughly 40 degrees, I think. My pickle jars are slightly over a half a gallon. It's about a gallon and a quart. So every time I milk the cow, I get 2 of these cows, plural. If I was to store buy my milk, we were buying cream line milk from a semi-local dairy that sold through stores. It was about $5.50 a gallon versus, you know, a case of this milk for like $20. So even if you have to store buy your milk to do this evaporated milk method, it's a good way to do it. A lot of recipes that we do are only evaporated milk, not condensed milk. I have had one recipe where I used condensed milk. It was so sweet we could not stand it. So if in the future we have condensed milk or it's sweetened milk, we'll revamp that recipe also, because the American diet is way too sugary and I don't think anybody needs that much in their diet. It's more of like a fudge baking sort of ingredient, and that's just not something we do. So when the pressure relief valve came up, I put my weight on to get it up to that 10 pounds of pressure. We're almost there. When that gets up to 10 minutes, we'll just turn it off. I just have this on a medium heat. When I was bringing it up, I brought it up a little bit higher, at about a 7 or an 8 on my dial. It goes from 8 to high. And then I turn it down, otherwise it'll climb that pressure too fast. Like I said earlier, we're doing cold milk, cold jars, cold lids, cold canner, cold water, and vinegar in the canner. So we are just about done. Now I probably started this, the longest part about this is washing the jars and waiting for this to vent, and then it comes up to the 10 pounds pretty quickly. So see, just in that amount of time, it came up that extra 1/10 on the gauge, so I can turn this off. So while this is sitting in the off position, don't mess with the weight or your jiggler. If you're doing that method, this is a weighted canner with the gauge. So we're gonna let that drop down to 0. No pressure at all. And when that says 0, after it's sat for a while and it's in that little black zone, I'll take that weight off, and I won't open it right away. I like to take that off, make sure that any residual steam or pressure is going to vent out that for several minutes before I actually open the canner. So I'm entirely down to 0 now. I just took off my weight to make sure there was no pressure left on it at all. And something I'll tell you about these, when you open them up, open that back side up first so that the steam doesn't rush at your face. And then I always just put this aside gently while I empty out my canner. Now the jars are very, very hot. Silicone hand mitts or oven mitts work really good. The hard part with 24 jars is I've got this really big jar lifter, and it works really great because this is solid silicone instead of just like a coated rubber wire. Those other styles, I end up going through one every season, and it just is disappointing how quickly they wear out. But with 24 jars, I'm having a hard time getting started to get my first jar out. Okay, so we're just gonna take that, look at that. And I have a towel on my counter. And we're just going to set these all out so that they cool. We're not having the ceiling fan on, we're not having a window cracked open. And that's the nice thing about doing this during this time of year is sometimes we do this in the hotter months like August, and You gotta make sure, you know, the air conditioner's off, not blowing cold air into the kitchen. Now, a lot of people in canning talk about shelf life. I have heard of people having this shelf stable for 5 years. Now, I'm going to go through these 24 cans a lot sooner than 5 years, for certain. Usually when we buy a couple of cases of 24, we would run out just due to having it on hand as a milk substitute for our coffee in the morning. You can hear that popping and pinging. My jars are sealing already. You should be hearing that as you go. And I'm leaving a bit of a space between each jar on the counter. We've got a U-shaped, you know, peninsula here. So I don't have enough space next to the stove to let them cool there without moving all my little appliances. So at the end of the day, this little shuffling around, it's good to get off your feet and rest. It's a good day for a crock pot meal. It's a good day for leftovers. However you want to run your kitchen, do it. So here are my jars all lined up and cooling. They're gonna sit here for 12 to 24 hours. I usually tend to leave them till midday tomorrow. We'll get these labeled and then I put them back in their original cases so that I can stack them up safely in the basement. And this is where the 1-inch headspace, you know, I just wanted to comment real quickly, is important because on a couple of them I had a little bit of siphoning, so then you get a little bit of milk spots. We'll want to make sure that those are cleaned off before we put in the pantry. Some people prefer to remove the bands after they've cooled and not have that. I don't like to do that because I am testing mine for seal as I'm pulling them out. Like you can see here, this one is dimpled down, this one is pushed up. As it cools, that's going to suck down. We're always watching our shelves in rotation for any spoilage and whatnot. But if you don't use a full jar, then you've got to dig out and find a band. And I've got enough bands for every jar that I own. It's just a preference that I have. I know some people like to seal, take them off, store them upside down for dust. It's just not something I like to do. I just store them back in their boxes on the shelf, and I don't have to worry about them getting knocked over by the kids who help in the pantry as well. So all in all, digging out my canning equipment, washing my jars, lids, and bands, the process of everything, it's probably an hour into it. It's nothing major. I can do this in a lot less time tomorrow because everything's already out. So I've got, you know, 12 jars here. I'm going to grab 12 more and wash them with my dishes tonight or in the morning so that they're ready to go, and do another batch so that I can continue to fill that pantry. You know, like I said, it's a surplus of milk. It's a good way to start using things up. This time of year, we have some space in the pantry, so I can put up, you know, like 48 jars of this or 100 jars of this and know that we're going to be good for quite a while. So if you're homesteading or you found a great price on milk this week, I hope this helps you. You know, try something new. It's great savings. It's very frugal. It's self-sufficient. And we're going to be having more stock, more supplies in our pantry that we were out of. I had to do some pumpkin pie for the kids last week, and I was short 1 can of evaporated milk, and I had to substitute for dry milk, which was always an option also. We'll be getting into that kind of situation, evaporating milk, powdered eggs in the future with the food dehydrator. So stay tuned, stay subscribed, and you'll be able to see those videos as they come out. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.